Yeah, and it's not actually always as binary, because the company has you travel for a reason, right? If you're going to a big sales meeting, if you're going to present at a conference, right, they want you to be there fresh. They don't want you to be sitting kind of on a 2-stop flight and risk not getting there on time. One of the challenges historically in the industry has been that people have had to come up with these kind of manual rules, and you had people who were only incented to do one thing, the travel manager, the people who were coming up with these rules, because they were only evaluated on the money that you spend on travel. I think you're starting to see right now people are really relooking at that culture that they have. Are they actually providing a good experience? Because recruiting top talent has become much more important. And the age that we're entering right now with the tools and the data that we have available, very often you can find ways where you can help with both. Some of the things that we hear a lot, approval processes. Companies put approval processes in place because they don't necessarily trust their travelers to do the right thing.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you have a lot of data, you can come up with algorithms that can figure out when is the right time to do an approval. And the truth is, very often because of these approval processes, it takes 2 days for somebody to approve a trip. The price may have gone up. You have people not spending time on something productive. You have chasing down the approver, etc. Well, what if you could figure out and automate these are the high-risk trips that need approval versus trips that should just easily go through? And historically, the industry has not provided good solutions, but we're actually at the cusp of this point where using the data, being able to look at kind of what is the real travel behavior, you can roll out an algorithm, and you can actually test that algorithm and see. Is the company saving more money because they're making everybody go through the stringent approval process, or are you having fewer price changes because people aren't waiting the extra days, sometimes week, to get their approval in place? So it's I think with the tools that we have available now, it doesn't have to be that very much kind of binary. Either you save money or you get kind of the dream trip that you want.
I think there is. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, there is this fine balancing act. There's no denying that. At least for CWT, we have a duty of care responsibility to the client. That's who pays our bills. And to that extent, to be policy compliant is something that all TMCs do take very seriously. At the same time, you can end up pissing off the traveler themselves because then you don't have an advocate for you. So the trick here is that, let me give you an example. Travel is one of those expenses that it doesn't matter how financially strong your company is. No one says that I had a blockbuster financial year, I'm going to increase my travel spend 20% next year. Not one company, not Google, not Facebook, no one does that. Everyone is looking to, when I'm talking about corporate travel specifically, to optimize travel. So how do you balance these competing needs? So there is 2 ways you do that. One is, over a period of time, people get efficient at doing things. So if you have a route that's being frequented, you get better discounts. So you get better discounts with hotels. So you save per trip average cost, plus you add to the traveler convenience factor. So for example, some of the things that we are doing is around machine learning and predictive analytics. Give you an example. Trip disruption is a very common pain point for travelers. You have a flight to catch, all of a sudden there's a connection that you missed. What do? The problem is that if you miss a connection or the flight is canceled or delayed, there are 200 other people trying to talk to that one gate agent asking for options. By the time they get to you, it's been 3 hours. How do you solve that problem for them? You can do it with data by predicting the likelihood of this, providing support when needed, which is proactive than reactive. And then the second thing is just improving the overall traveler experience. If you can have like an Uber-like setting on your app, which takes care of everything from rerouting you to giving you notifications to helping you book a hotel room without you having to actually wait in line, these things do add a lot of value. Regarding the travelers need to travel business class, first class, accumulate miles, the fundamental nature of free markets is people will find a way to do that. You don't have to do that for them. That's my personal opinion, but yes, tools like that will help. Behavioral incentives do help by all means, but anyone wants to accumulate miles on any carrier, people will find a way to game the system.
Completely, and I think that lends directly into kind of our next set of questions, which has a lot to do with technology and how that's really going to affect business travel in the foreseeable future. And now I'll pitch over to Ilan to really dive into that. But
yeah, I'm really excited about this topic, and in Trip Actions we really like thinking about technology and innovation and see how it can really help corporate travel. We feel that, corporate travel has been kind of like neglected almost in the past decade compared to consumer travel, where, there's been a lot of technology and a lot of products out there. What we see is that, we have actually a lot of data, and the data is really good because users have a profile in our system, all of them, because it's corporate travel only. So, how can we use technology and data to really, improve the experience? So there is all these like buzzwords that if I will let you guess, I'm sure that you will guess, but there is machine learning and AI. And I can promise you one thing, actually two things. First, this thing bothers the shit out of me, but I will ignore it. I'm trying my best.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
And the second thing, I never talk about things, I'm an engineer, I never talk about things that I don't fully understand. So with machine learning and AI in trip actions, we use it for, for multiple things, but how can we improve the experience? Give you one example. Most of you knew that you need to book a flight, or depends where you're coming from, but in order to be here. So really this whole event started with a meeting, with a conference, with a summit here. And then you need to book the flight to get here. So when users come to our system to search for something, they already have a meeting in the calendar, and they just need to get there. So now if you search and you don't book, we fucked it up. We did not serve you well, so something was wrong. And so if there is a way for us, if there was a way for us to predict whether you're going to book or not within the next 10 minutes, we could actually hyper-serve you and show up and tell you, hey, maybe we can help you with the return flight from Paris, and we just know that 5 of your colleagues have booked this flight, so maybe we can help you with that. So using machine learning, we actually managed to get to a 92% accuracy. So like 30 seconds since you run the search and get the results, 30 seconds after, we know with 92% accuracy whether you're going to book or not within the next 25 minutes. And that's a real example of how technology can really improve the experience in corporate travel.
Yeah, if I can build on this, kind of this concept of machine learning AI, I think it's gotten to a point where if a company doesn't say in their marketing pitch that we do machine learning and AI, it's like they're a dinosaur, right? Yeah. Agile is something similar. Every company says we're agile. These days now, every company says, hey, we do machine learning and AI. But it is really important, as Ilan said, like you have to figure out what use cases are you solving with machine learning and AI. I'll give a specific example. For us as Agency and Expedia Group, the headquarters is in the Seattle area, but it's in the suburbs, in the suburb of Bellevue. If you have a flight to Seattle and you're an agency employee, should we be recommending you a hotel downtown Seattle, or should we be recommending you a hotel in Bellevue? Well, we know because we know who you are, we know who your coworkers are, we're able to, again, algorithmically recommend a hotel in Bellevue for you. Now, Expedia later this year is actually going to move headquarters and move from Bellevue into Seattle. At that point, our algorithms will just automatically pick up that as people start booking hotels in Seattle, we're going to be recommending to you the hotels in Seattle. So you really need to be able to talk about what specific use cases are you solving, rather than just talk about, oh, we use AI machine learning to decrease costs or to do something else.
Now you convinced me that you're also an engineer. Like,
so I'll be a little bit provocative. So I think there's a more fundamental problem in the corporate travel space, which is to what Ilan said is the reason that this industry has been neglected. And it's not about pipe dreams and buzzwords about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that's great. But before we get there, I think there's a bigger problem, which is a human problem. And the problem is the reason that the leisure travel industry, that there's so much innovation and startups in the leisure travel space and almost none in the corporate travel space, is because when you're in the corporate travel space, you've by definition eradicated choice, because the way that corporations set up their corporate travel structures is to force employees into a single purchase funnel, into a Carlson, into a TripActions, into Agencia. All of these systems are forced interactions. They're not choices. They're come into my system, and to their credit, Agencia and TripActions and Carlson have all built wonderful user experiences that are elegant, that are well designed, that use AI and chatbots and machine learning to get the job done, but there's no choice. As a human being, as an employee of this company, I have to use this system. And that sucks for me because travel, as we all know, is an emotional construct. I'm leaving my friends and family and loved ones. I'm going out on the road, I'm sleeping in someone else's bed, and I have to use this arguably outdated, shitty, clunky, or very slick, sexy new system, but it's not what I'm used to.
There's nobody from Concur on this panel, so we don't have to do this.
And this is where it's interesting, because I think, now that you brought up Concur, I think this is the one area that Concur got this right, and it's a long game, and it's hard as hell, but the concept of merging Hipmunk and TripLink to arrive at a construct where, as a business traveler, I get the freedom and flexibility to choose how I want to book, whether I'm a Delta or United or an American person, whether I'm a Hilton or a Starwood person, as long as my company policy allows me to book with those vendors, because again, policy is important, preferred carriers, negotiated rates, and we'll get into that. But as long as I'm allowed to book with those carriers, I should have the freedom and flexibility to book how I want, as long as my system, my corporate system, can suck that information back in. But why am I being forced into somebody else's booking tool that I didn't choose, that I didn't want to use? And I think it is different than you have to use this laptop or you have to use this stapler, because of the emotional construct that travel sits in. It's a personal thing. It's not a corporate thing.
I mean, for what it's worth, what you're saying is absolutely right. Am I still on? Okay.
They just fixed the glitch and cut them off.
Okay. No, you're absolutely right. And I think we will see over a period of time more of a shift toward that employee empowerment and the flexibility to choose. And TMCs are the way they are, not out of choice. It's because the business model was built like this. We're just adapting ourselves to what the client is saying. Tomorrow, if the millennials choose to stay at an Airbnb, there's an argument that what happens to standard hotels that are literally an exit on the freeway. They're built for business travel. So this change is going to happen, but I don't think it's going to be that dramatic that we'll see a sudden shift. And businesses inherently, for-profit businesses, have this inherent ability to adjust to the demand per se. But what I did wanted to talk about, since we're talking about AI and I didn't want to feel left out, I'm not an engineer.
Because you're not a dinosaur, we understand.
I'm not an engineer. But as you're right. Our ability to process enormous amounts of data now has huge implications for travel, not just in the corporate travel space, but generally. Think about it for a typical standard hotel. Front desk literally has no value creation as far as either the establishment or the traveler is concerned. The only reason you stop by the front desk is essentially to give them your registration details and collect the keys. A machine can do that much better than you. Apps can do that more effectively than you. It is arguable that 10 years from now, you will not have a front desk at a hotel or a checkout at a hotel. What does that mean for a lot of people who are employed in those roles? These roles may not exist. It's true also for a lot of people, maybe in TMC space or call center space. Chatbots can do 70% of what a human can do. The only thing they don't currently have is cognition. But most of the dialogue doesn't need any cognition. Most of the dialogue is pretty transactional. I need to fly from point A to point B. So how can you position yourself that you're able to meet that demand tomorrow? And capability doesn't get built overnight. You don't suddenly say, okay, now I need to have a chatbot solution that's 100% scalable and spend $1 billion. It doesn't happen. So corporations, especially in our space, I think we start with building capability little by little. There's still a whole lot of unknowns in this space. But I do believe that in the field of AI, we are still just seeing a very early emergence of chatbot technology being adopted as more mainstream. And it's only a matter of a very short amount of time before it's more visible. The other thing is around predictive analytics, as you pointed out. Some of the things that we are doing that's going to ease both the traveler experience and also generally create a more pleasurable travel experience is to predict events with a high degree of accuracy. For example, if everyone looks at your app on the phone to check what the weather is like, to make a guess on if your flight is going to be on time or not, but there is no the confidence on those things is not as high as it should be. We now have the ability to predict with a very, very high degree of accuracy the likelihood of your travel being disrupted or canceled up to 24 hours in advance of your trip. Now, what that does is that it gives you the options then to keep your trip as is, or be notified, or simply ask for alternative flight recommendations. These things go a long, long way for employee and traveler experience, because if you're a road warrior, you know the pain if you're stranded at an airport.
But the problem is that your boss will always tell you 6 hours in advance of your flight that you need to change. That's like the universal max, is no matter how short you make that period or how long, it's always outside that period is when the change happens.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something that Dan said about corporate travel being on the coattails of leisure travel, and I actually think that we're at a point where there could be an inflection. I think the fact that in leisure travel, when somebody comes to the site, they don't identify themselves, and very often you're starting from scratch trying to figure out what experience to give to that traveler. On the other hand, in corporate, right away we know who you are. We also know who are people like you, because we know who are people who work for your company. Being able to put this data together, it actually gives us a lot of capabilities that we're just now starting to experiment with, but making some very interesting things, and also being able to tie across channels. I think one of the things that you're beginning to see the advantage of a tool that is fully integrated between the same company that's providing the mobile app, the same company providing the website, the same company that's powering the agents and chatbots, etc., is that anything that you do, you start your action in one place, you're able to pick up and seamlessly continue on another channel. And having all this data that we know about you, we already know what you've been doing, we know what your coworkers have been doing, and you don't really have to do anything to tell us that. Like, I actually think that there is a great opportunity for these types of platforms, platform TMCs, who have everything integrated to give a significantly better experience than on the consumer side.
I think you've got a really good shot at it, but you still have an industry where half of corporate travel is not booked through your systems because employees think they suck, and so employees aren't, like 50% of corporate travel is leaked. And booked outside of the corporate travel too. Yeah. So the question is, are we solving a problem that travelers have, or are we solving a problem that, as you said, travel managers have? And I think we in this industry have for too long tried to solve the problems of the travel manager, and that's not what travelers want. And so then the question is, what do travelers want? And I agree, it's a better user experience, it's artificial intelligence, it's machine learning, it's predictive analytics, but it's also choice and flexibility. And I don't think that we as an industry are figuring out the choice and flexibility angle well enough.
Diving into that point, and I think that, as we're being close to time, because by the way, it was like this last night too, guys. Okay, so that's the state of the state. That there's a lot of data out there from some of the most intentional acts that we do in business, because we know where we're going. It's a lot of, not even just analyzing travelers within inside your company, but also the fact that there are travelers in similar, title positions with similar types of routes. Is this, sort of comparable travel, so on? Because I know people from job to job, they actually say, oh, travel benefits are better here than there.
Yep.
Where do you all see this headed in 5 to 10 years? Like, if there's sort of a golden palace, not the dystopian, but the golden palace of the future, where do you see business travel evolving to?
I think I really think that it's all about generating value, real and unique value to users, and it could be the travel manager, it could be the traveler, the booker, the admin. So as long as you provide an amazing user experience, amazing value, they will stick to you. And what we see is 93% of the corporate travel, budget travel, actually goes through us, and no one is enforced, as well as the company is not bounded to us. They can leave us every day. Or in fact, they need to choose us every day in order to keep using us. But following up on that, I think that, how can we make corporate travel even less stressful and generate more value? And this is like the future.
Yeah, sure.
I think that, this whole notion of going and searching for a flight and then filtering the results and comparing across multiple airlines and finally choosing the one that you want, again, this is all like a tool, right? Because the goal is for you to be here and to be rested and have a good summit. That's the goal. So I think that with the help of technology, if there is a way for us to change the booking tool to be your calendar, basically, where it all starts there. If you think about it, corporate travel starts with your calendar, with a meeting, with a conference, with a summit, with an offsite. If you can connect to your calendar plus some notion of like a communication channel, it could be chat or Slack or something new or email or phone, whatever that thing is, with machine learning, you basically say, I need to be in Miami, and knowing who you are, because you do log into the system, and there is a profile on you, and there's colleagues and other travelers. If we can really give you the itinerary, or at least the flight, and then give you an easy way to modify it or change it if you need to. I think that would be really nice. I can see a future where you don't really need to go and filter and search and sort and research and do it again and get frustrated and then do it again and spend 20 minutes, half an hour, or 2 hours on that.
I think
were you actually in my office prior to this conference? Because that's exactly what happened. So, all right.
No. What I was going to say is that's actually very interesting, and this is a discussion, by the way, that we've been having internally at Colson Wagonlit for almost the time that I've been here. What does the TMC of future look like? I don't know when, but that is exactly where we believe it is headed, where you take an input to solve an objective is to be in New York on so-and-so date, and this is where you need to be, and your itinerary gets programmatically built around that with the most personalized set of hotel options or preferred airlines and stuff. All you have to do is say yes or no, so you don't have to do any thinking. So you want to take the human thinking element out of this to the extent possible and make it frictionless. You still have an option to go back and choose it.
But as a counter-argument, Dan's position was that that actually is more fitted than the current solution, so people might actually leak more in that case.
Yeah, I think by and large, with all due respect to my TMC colleagues up here, I think the TMC model is severely flawed because it's a massive intermediary in a completely inefficient market. And not only do the corporates not want it and complain about it, but the vendors complain about it too, because the vendors don't want to pay commissions to intermediaries, and the vendors would prefer that the vendors are actually hurting the TMC model because the vendors are spiffing the traveler for going direct to the vendor. So you will get your status if you come directly to this, and so you're creating this tug of war between the vendors and the corporates, and really nobody is in favor of the TMC. But the TMC today provides a vital service, and duty of care matters, and negotiator rates matter. And so it'll continue to exist for a time, but 5 to 10 years, I think that...
By the way, you're lucky, Alex. You get the final word.
You wanted me to pick a fight.
No, I didn't.
Your fight.
I did not say that.
I think that Dan could really pitch why it makes a lot of sense to invest in startups in the TMC world. Really, like he describes an amazing space for innovation, basically. Yes, this is the world, but there's so many other ways of making money, so many other ways to open your platform.
Well, there's also
TMCs that will not do it will
there's also
have trouble.
A huge amount of money invested in the status quo. I mean, the big 5, now the big 4 TMCs control the lion's share of managed travel. That is a shitload of money, and a lot of very, very wealthy people invested in making sure nobody innovates.
Yeah.
Well,
Alex, you get the final word.
I think the good thing is that, speaking for our customers, we're not getting that same message from our customers, and we're able to actually get quite a lot high customer satisfaction and have very good relationships with suppliers. I think the fact that we are very consumer focused from the get-go, we get very high adoption rates, and that leads to a lot of the other things. But I think a lot of the things in terms of what's going to happen in the 5-10 years, I very much agree with. But I actually will come back to the travel culture piece, and I think the fact that we can influence the travel culture as well, and not necessarily just implement the rules that the travel manager is putting in place, but help them. How do you make it a better experience? When looking at seasonality across hotels, do you have one policy that just says it's the same per diem all the time, even if you have a big event like in San Francisco, if you have Dreamforce going on? Should you require somebody to stay at a 2-star hotel somewhere 50 miles away or not? So I think a lot of what will happen on top of the great consumer experience, and I think that the industry will continue to innovate, and if somebody stays back and provides the experience then that you're talking about, they're very quickly going to lose share. But the culture, the experience that you have on the consumer side, it's the fact that people go and shop around and they go to the supplier side, people actually don't want to do that. People want to have one place where everything is easy, it's seamless, and it's done for them.
All right, thank you. Do we have time for questions? I don't know who's supposed to be signaling yes, no. Okay, I'm just assuming so. So front row.
Hello, I'm Inigo Valenzuela. I'm the CEO and founder of one of the startups that pitched this morning. And I had a lot of fun with your panel. Congrats for 2 reasons. First, I am also a business traveler, as most of you. And second, because I've worked 20 years in the TMC business, in Carlson and in other companies. And I have 2 considerations, 2 questions. One, don't you think that sometimes there has been a lot of inflation on the product, giving more things? I'm talking about the former or the big TMCs, no? Giving more products than the market really needed. That's one thing. And the second, That's for Dan. You will take advantage of that, I'm sure. Don't you think that the real disruption will come when I could book my trip in any channel, and the TMCs will provide the technology to handle the data and the agreements and the travel policy, but the bookings could be done anywhere, so the leakage will be zero, with some kind of master profile with blockchain or whatever.
There's another, yes. So to your point, I think, number one, yes, TMCs historically, and by the way, disclaimer, rocket trip partners, we can't do what we do without TMCs as partners, so TMCs are our friends. Most of them.
They're just not here.
But yes, TMCs historically have had a knack for over-innovation, of over-engineering solutions that are valuable to the TMC. Remember, there's a massive agency problem here, no pun intended. TMCs make money when you purchase those last-minute, fully refundable first-class seats. So in a way, right, we are trying to provide the antidote to that model. Same with the airlines. Airlines want you to purchase overpriced last-minute tickets. And so the question is, who's making money in this equation? The second thing I'd point out is, and this is something we haven't touched on, but I think it's a very interesting dynamic, especially in the large enterprise space. Concur Travel has a virtual monopoly in the large enterprise space. And the reason for that is not the quality of their online booking tool. Their online booking tool is not that great. It's the quality of their expense management solution. And the way that they've packaged the two products together makes it very appealing to purchase Concur Travel along with Concur Expense. And so anyone who's trying to meaningfully disrupt the enterprise travel space has to figure out how to get around Concur booking. And that's a very, very challenging one. That's not about travel management, it's about broad-based how companies procure products.
I have to make a comment. I think this is disruption. This, I don't think it was easy for Apple to disrupt Nokia or RIM. This is disruption.
Yeah, fair play.
So if you, what you're saying is describing the perfect opportunity for a TMC, a new TMC,
but then you
to
have
come and disrupt.
But then you have to manage expense too, because Concur is not going to let you integrate unless you log into their system and file expenses for them.
But the argument from the question ultimately was whether or not you can build something that is essentially a featureless unit, not just simply calendar, but I think because I would actually disagree that it's just pure calendar. I actually think that there's a component of, I think people want choice because there is that cognitive, like, I want to get up that early. Oh yeah, I have to do this because that's in my personal life, or I don't, have a preference for this or another, which can be totally unstated. We would love to get to other questions, but we have 4, 3, 2, 1 left, and there's allegedly a dessert break now. So, but I'm sure that we will be given more details. Thank you so much. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.